Hello, just a note for our Illuminating Catholics listeners. If you have any young children around, you might want to consider whether or not the material in this episode is appropriate for their listening. It deals with human trafficking, so do take that in mind before you listen to our episode. Thank you so much. Welcome to Illuminating Catholics, podcast of the Diocese of Sioux City. I'm Dawn Prosser, Director of Communications for the Diocese. Together with Carmen Bauer of the Faith Formation Office, we will shed light upon topics of faith in the modern church. Our guests include Catholic clergy, religious sisters, and other experts in their fields to help us understand what's happening in the church today. We will explore issues, even the tough ones, and to find answers to common questions about Catholicism. Thank you for joining us for today's Illuminating Catholics, shedding light to understand the modern church. Welcome back to the Illuminating Catholics podcast. I am Dawn Prosser, Director of Communications for the Diocese of Sioux City.
And I am Carmen Bauer, the Director of Faith Formation.
We want to thank you all for making time in your day to listen to our episode. It's a very important one to listen to because we're very happy to welcome Sister Shirley Fineran, Franciscan sister and longtime Briarcliff University professor of social work, to the podcast today. We're going to be talking about another tough topic, human trafficking, specifically sex trafficking, its prevalence, and what's being done in Northwest Iowa to help the victims. So, Sister, we are just really pleased that you took time out of your day to come and visit with us and share this information.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Yes, welcome, Sister. We're excited to have you here. So let's just jump right in. Can you, we hear the term human trafficking, but how would you define that and explain it to other people?
So human trafficking is thought of more as sex trafficking, but it really involves sex trafficking and labor trafficking, and they go hand in hand. Oftentimes, persons who are either labor trafficked are also sex trafficked, and people who are sex trafficked are many times labor trafficked as well. So it's really coercing someone to perform services of sexual nature or labor, and controlling them is really what it's about. And so it's really can start at any age. So can be a baby, as young as a baby. Oftentimes people can be sex trafficked at 2 years old and then actually grow up in it. And usually if it's 2 years old, it's often with families. And with sex trafficking, with human trafficking, the big issue, which a lot of people don't focus on, are the buyers. So if we didn't have people wanting to buy sex, we would not have the problem. We would not have the crime. So the crime is really people being trafficked by people who are buying them and controlling them and selling them. But if we didn't have people who were buyers, sometimes people call them Johns, but I think John is a nice name, so I call it what it is.
Our bishop would say that, yeah.
Yeah, so, we call it what it is. People are willing to pay for sex. A lot of people kind of do this in their own mind. They think of these people as prostitutes, and most of the time they are forced to have sex with people who want to buy them.
And oftentimes when we hear stories about human trafficking, it's easy to think of what might be happening overseas and in other countries. Correct. Can you give us a little bit of history, just how it affects us here in America and maybe our own local communities?
Right. In fact, I used to teach social work at Briarcliff, and in 2014, the Peace and Justice Office of the Diocese had a human trafficking conference at Briarcliff in June of 2014. And I thought, well, I should probably go to this conference because I know about human trafficking a little bit, but I always thought it happens in other countries and probably large cities. So I was pretty much like other people in terms of thinking, Iowa, the Midwest, doesn't happen here. However, Midwest people are very trusting, and we have a lot of rural areas, and we also have some interstates, and so the Midwest is very fertile ground for people to be trafficked. Both labor, we have labor trafficking going on in Iowa, and we have an active sex trafficking going on as well.
How do the victims end up in these situations where they find themselves trafficked? Are there certain patterns? You'd mentioned that some people are taken advantage of by family members,
Right.
but what are some common situations that lead people into that world?
So, and I'm just thinking right now of school starting. When I give talks, and I was telling Dawn I'm going to be talking to some boys in October, and I'll go on about sex trafficking. And we know that our young people are very much on social media and on the internet, and so that's the primary way today where people get recruited is on social media. And so for people who at any age are looking for friends, looking to get new people on their social media, or if someone says, oh, show me a picture, or I see your picture, you are so pretty, or you're such a good, handsome looking guy. And so for people who are looking for that affirmation, that's a really easy way to start the relationship. So the idea that people are picked up and thrown into a van pretty much doesn't happen. Once in a while it might happen, but in Iowa that's really not happening. So they really develop a relationship and really try to be that person's friend, if not their boyfriend or girlfriend. Boys get trafficked as well, and boys are less likely to tell people than girls because they think that shouldn't happen to them. But so in social media, they begin to develop a relationship, and then eventually they will want to meet them someplace. And oftentimes, kids don't tell their parents, or they don't tell a friend. And so when that person gets them into the point of being more exclusive or controlling, now don't tell anybody that we're going to meet, or don't show this to anybody else, or they want to have a relationship with them that's very private and exclusive, and so the control is that's the biggest issue. When they get them into a place of control, that control lasts. When it begins, it lasts a lifetime. Even if the person is no longer under that trafficker, that control that they have is really what lasts, because it's really like this, the Stockholm Syndrome, or different kinds of controls that we've heard, through our lifetime. And that's really what helped me really decide to start Lila Mae's House, when I met someone and listened to someone who had been out of the life for 35 years, and the story that she shared in terms of what she would do if she saw her trafficker, the control that he still had over her after 35 years, and the training that she had, and her work that she was even doing with survivors, was still there. So, and when people are trafficked, they have a huge lack of trust. And of course, at Lila Mae's House, that's something that we always have to deal with initially, is the trust. And so because the trust is there during their trafficking, they're not going to tell people often what's happening, or they are really led to believe it's their fault, and they have a lot of shame about that. I fell for this. So I know people that are professional people who have been trafficked, and it's just like, I can't believe that I let this happen to me, because I should know better. I'm a whatever profession, and so then the shame is even greater for them, and then it's even more difficult oftentimes for them to talk about what actually happened and to really begin their journey of healing.
When you've worked with individuals, what are the ways that they have been able to escape that kind of that day-to-day control, even though it does hover over them for their lifetime? That's
hard sometimes to know. So one of the principles I have for myself is, if I, like at Lila Mae's House, it's not my role to have them tell me their story, because I don't need to know that triggers them. And so then I don't always know how they escape the life. So some of them, it was just an opportunity of whatever. Oftentimes they try to escape more than once. And that's a really difficult issue too, because if they escape and they're found, then everybody in their, what's called a stable, their group, gets punished. And so, I know women who have watched other people be killed, and they were the next one, and then she was able to escape. So it's more difficult too when it's more familial trafficking, because you always have your family somewhere, and so that's even more difficult for them to find a place to be away from them. So at Lila Mae's House, we don't accept women we only accept women, but we don't accept women who are being trafficked in Sioux City. We send them someplace else because it would be too easy for them to maybe contact them or for the trafficker to try to find them, and then that's a safety issue for everyone. But how people leave, it's oftentimes it might be through an intervention with law enforcement, and I don't try to rescue women because it's a dangerous kind of act to try to do, and it's really law enforcement's job to do that.
That's just frightening, and
it is.
And like you said, it's right here in Northwest Iowa as well. Don't be fooled. Sister, you mentioned I think you said 2014 trafficking conference at the university.
Right.
Were you still teaching there at
was.
that time?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
From that, can you just share with us a little bit about, after attending that and learning more, how that brought you to kind of where you are today?
Right.
You're like our go-to for interviews like this
Right.
about human trafficking. So if you could share.
Good, thank you. So then a group of us got together. You go to meetings and people get an idea. It's like I read in Lumen about the women's group that's coming up, and I thought, as an idea somebody had, it's like, well, let's do it.
Yep.
So that's how those kind of ideas, make fruition in some way. So a group of us decided that we need to do something about this. It's happening in here. So at that conference, there were a lot of law enforcement, a lot of FBI was involved because human trafficking is a federal crime, so it's a felony. And so FBI always needs to be involved in some way. So then some of us started a coalition, and then through the coalition, I really started teaching people. I did a lot of presentations on human trafficking. And then a year later, the Siouxland Mental Health had a conference on human trafficking. And Teresa Flores was the speaker, and she was from Detroit and has written a couple of books, was trafficked in Detroit when she was 15. And it'd take me too long to tell you her story, but the end was that she was left in the streets of Detroit naked, and the police, and ready to die, and the police found her. And so she was the one who said, I know my trafficker, I know where he lives, I still think he's handsome. And then she pointed, this was down at Stony Creek, and she pointed to the door, conference room door. And she said, if he were to open that door and say my name, I would go to him. And I just could not believe that, with everything that she knew, that she would go to him. She said, I don't know if I would get in the car and go with him, but I would know if he called me to come to him, I would have to go. And so that helped me to understand in a very, very small way the deep and lasting control that traffickers have. So I went home that day, and I have a prayer room in my house, and I just prayed, and I told God, I've got to do more than I'm doing in terms of educating, even though I love to do that. And so God just planted it in my heart that you have to start a house for women who've been sex trafficked. So that was in 2015. And so gathered a group of people together from Siouxland area at my house, and we talked about whether this is something Siouxlanders would support, and so got a small group from there to how those things start, and so from there we began planning what it would look like, and so I worked for Catholic Charities in Chicago before I moved to Sioux City, and so I had started 5 family shelters, so I kind of knew that kind of work, what to do. But I really did not know what to do, in terms of, I just knew I had to do it. So we were granted a home in 2017, and which was wonderful. And so we did some renovation, and we had welcomed our first woman in January of 21. And we have, I think, served 25 women since that time.
Can you tell us a little bit about the name Lila Mae House?
So when we were first doing this, I wanted to call it Siouxland Restoration Center because I thought, this is my naivete, I guess, thinking we'd restore women to their former life. And it didn't take me too long to find out most of them have never had a normal life. And so after someone told me, it sounds like you're restoring cars or something. So one of the donors who also designed the house, her name is Lila Mae, and she and her husband used to live in Sioux City and moved to Texas. But so she was so honored, and her family was, when we renamed it Lila Mae's house.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And can you tell us just a little bit how the house operates? You know, is there, I guess from the top, is there a board? Is it just you? And then kind of those day-to-day operations, how that's all taken care of.
So I've never been a paid staff person. And so we have an executive director, we have a board of directors, we have a house manager, a case manager, and then we have what's called direct support professionals. And so they're like overnight and during evening hours and weekends. So we're 24/7, and that is for safety and for the maximum healing of women. And that's very expensive to have 24/7 coverage. So we have room for 7. We've had room for 7, but we really have learned that 5 is a good number. And so the house that we were given had an unfinished basement, which was incredible for us because we renovated it into 5 bedrooms, private bedrooms, and then 2 bathrooms. And so we have found that 5 is a good number. When you take 5 women, different ages, different cultures, all with complex trauma, 5 is a good number. So the 5 women that we've had there for the last year, it's a long time to have the same people there, which is, first time we've done that, have really gotten along great. So one left last month. She moved to someplace in Sioux City, and then we have another one that's moving actually tomorrow, and she will be reunited with her son, which we have worked to do that. So we'll have room for 2 more coming up really soon. So when they first get there, and we've had people come from, they were living in a park, or they were just hospitals or whatever. So we get referrals from the individual, from hospitals, from law enforcement, from whatever. So people call themselves. So there's a referral form on our website that they have to fill out, or somebody needs to. So when they first come, they just need to rest and just to be. And so we allow that time for them to do that. And so we have groups, and the women all do some group activities, and we do that with the case manager as well as the direct support professionals. And then we utilize community services, so we use Catholic Charities and community health services and mental health services. So we use all the community services. So they all go to a different therapist who's been trained in complex trauma, because that's what they have experienced, and people need to know how to do that. And you can imagine they all come with medical issues. And so some of them are worse than others. And of course, depending on the physical abuse that they've had. So most people who are trafficked really have to service around 20 people a day. So if you can imagine, however young the person was when she started servicing other people, you can imagine her body after doing that 20 times a day for how many years. So parts of their body are really in dire need of physical wellness and repair. So we try to take care of that, and just even having someone touch them or just to be seen. So we try not to have them go as a group or go someplace where they might be fearful. And so we're always aware that they all have different triggers. So like raising a voice, slamming a door. We had one woman, the color green was a trigger for her. So it can be just anything. So we try to let the participants know what triggers other people have, so they're aware of that, of course, as well as the staff. And then they meet, so they go to school, and they also go to work. So depending on how long they've been there, then we allow them to start doing that. So one woman right now is writing a book about her experiences. Another woman is doing an online job, actually, at Lila Mae's house. And then 2 people are working outside the house right now. So when people are doing those kind of things, that the dynamics of what we do together sometimes changes. But actually tonight I haven't done this for a while, but I'm a professionally trained color analyst, and
that's fun.
That's another life.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to go up tonight and do that with the women.
Oh,
so,
how wonderful!
Yeah.
That would be so fun.
Yes.
From You're multi-talented,
Yeah.
sister.
So I just want to finish about what.
Yes.
Then they share the evening meal together and they cook, and so that's one time when they're together. So they pray before they eat, or they share a poem or something. So some women, it's not uncommon at all for women to have been trafficked and abused by people in the religion, in a pastor, in a religious setting. So because of the control that they have experienced, I do not want to use God as another form of control. So unlike some places, we do not force them to go to church or have Bible study, but if they want to do that, we try to make that happen for them. But and we can have some very spiritual times, but it's not forced, and I think that's very important. So I think they experience God through us and how we treat them more than they have to, go to church. So
Definitely, and I can only imagine the transformations that you've witnessed and the healing that you witnessed.
Yes.
And it's a reminder that those of us who aren't involved, we can certainly pray for those
Yes,
in
absolutely.
our local communities who are healing
Yeah.
from that. And another way to help, obviously, is with funding. So how does that look for Lila Mae House? Can people give? Do you have any fundraisers?
Absolutely. So the biggest fundraiser we've had the last couple of years is Shamrock the House. And so we always had that the Friday before St. Patrick's Day in March. And so, but funding is really it's a huge issue for us. So that's primarily the job of the executive director right now. And if we had money to hire a program director, operations director, that would be something we'd like to do, because she has to do some of that. But it's when you have 24/7 staff, it's very expensive. So. We did have to close for a year because we ran out of money to pay staff. So thankfully we're doing okay right now, but it's always a board concern. We have a wonderful board right now, and that's very, very helpful, and they're very active in fundraising and everything that we need. So that's really good.
I think there is a spot on your website to donate online.
Absolutely.
Okay, we'll put a link to that in our show notes to help people find it for you.
Thank you.
So I will, just a quick note that I think I first met you, sister, when the house opened. I think I'd been on the job about 4 days and had no idea where I was going. And that is where I met you, got to see the house, and it is beautiful.
Yes.
It really is.
We had a wonderful blessing, of the house.
Yes, it was, and a very calming place.
Thank you. Yeah, it is. So that's, the women feel just so at home and so loved. When you hear someone say, that's the first time someone told me they loved me, that I really believed, it just makes it all worth it.
You do such great work, great work,
you.
and I know we're just barely touching on the topics, but I think this does give us all just some facts about what's going on and how it happens, and ways that your services, law enforcement, social service agencies can help. So thank you, sister, for taking time to come in.
Could I just give one more?
Absolutely.
So I'm also part of the Iowa Network Against Human Trafficking and Slavery. So for your listeners, a good way to keep informed, and for you to keep informed on what's happening in Iowa and also nationally, is IowaNAHT.org, the Iowa Network Against Human Trafficking.org. So we put recent arrests that have been made, and how many people have been arrested or in prison, or the work that we're doing. So I know right now in Sioux City we have a police officer on our coalition board as well, and we had a meeting Tuesday night, and I know that there are some cases right now that are being worked on. But it's a lot of work and a long time to get someone prosecuted.
I can only imagine.
Yeah.
Especially if the victims are scared.
Yes, to testify, because you can, if you arrest somebody with drugs, you have the drug paraphernalia, and that's your evidence. With trafficking, it's the person.
Yeah. Challenging, and we'll put a link to that.
Okay.
In as well. So again, thank you for coming down. It's nice to see you in person since you're
too.
local. It's nice to have you here in the studio with us and enlightening all of us on a really tough topic, a very real topic, and local, and that is the human trafficking and the sex trafficking, the labor trafficking, all which does occur right here in Northwest Iowa, if that's where you're listening from, so we're not immune. Thank you for the good work that you do and serving the most vulnerable among us. And thank you to all of you that listen to learn more about this, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss another episode of Illuminating Catholics. Thank you for listening to this episode of Illuminating Catholics, shedding light to understand the modern church. Follow us for more episodes on topics of the Catholic faith. For more diocesan news, visit lumenmedia.org.